My name is Iris Tmain, and I just turned 18. At my birthday party last night, my dad pulled me aside and whispered, "When this is over, you're going to sign some papers for Uncle Wade. Just a formality." I smiled. I nodded. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and quietly moved my entire multi-million-dollar inheritance from my grandparents into an irrevocable trust, just as a precaution. By the next morning, my parents and my little sister discovered that the cabin, the savings, the investments, all of it, were sealed behind a legal wall they couldn't touch. My dad went pale. My uncle, who'd already signed a deal to sell property he never actually owned, called a lawyer. Before I tell you what happened next, hit like and subscribe, and drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're all listening from. Now let me take you back 6 years, to a summer at Cedar Lake, when my grandfather said something I didn't understand until last night, a sentence that quietly answered a question I didn't even know I was asking. The summer I turned 12, my grandfather, Harold Tmain, picked me up in his truck and drove me 40 minutes to Cedar Lake. The cabin sat back from the water, surrounded by white pines so tall they blocked out the afternoon sun. The porch sagged on one side. The screen door never latched right. It smelled like would smoke and old books, and something sweet I could never quite name. "Grab the other end," Grandpa said, lifting a fence rail. We spent the morning replacing 3 rotted posts along the south side. He never rushed me. He showed me how to check for soft spots by pressing my thumb into the grain. If it gives, it's done. Inside, Grandma Vivian had iced tea and sandwiches waiting on the kitchen table Grandpa had built himself the year they married. She sat on the porch reading, patted the chair beside her, and we watched the lake turn gold together. "This cabin stays in the family," Grandpa told me that evening, wiping sawdust off his hands. "But family isn't always blood, Iris. Family is whoever shows up." I was 12. I thought he was just being poetic. He wasn't. That whole summer I came back to Cedar Lake nearly every weekend. I learned where the water heater leaked, which windows stuck, how to bleed the radiator. In October, Grandma taught me to organize the bookshelves by color because it made the room feel warmer. Grandpa showed me the old iron property line stakes he'd hammered in himself. I had no idea then that he was already sitting down with a lawyer about exactly this place, about exactly me. Back home in Ridgemont, the air was different. Our house was fine. 3 bedrooms, a yard that needed mowing, a garage my dad used as an office for his building supply store. Fine, not warm. My sister Kelsey, 10 at the time, had the bigger bedroom, redecorated the spring before with lavender walls and a desk lamp that cost more than my entire bookshelf. My room still had the carpet from the previous owners. At dinner one night, my dad brought up the cabin. "Dad's place is just sitting there losing value," Greg said, cutting his steak. "Property taxes alone are killing us. We should sell it, reinvest." My mom, Denise, nodded along without looking up. "That makes sense," she said. "Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family," I offered. Greg laughed. Not a mean laugh, worse, a dismissive one. "You were 12, Iris." He was being nice. Nobody asked me anything else. The conversation moved right on to Kelsey's debate trophy, regional finalist, very impressive, and how Denise had already gotten the certificate framed. I'd won the district science fair 2 weeks earlier. The ribbon was still zipped inside my backpack, untouched. Clearing plates after dinner, I found a glossy flyer half hidden under a grocery list on the counter. Ridgeline Development, lakefront lots, premium prices, now acquiring. A handwritten phone number was scrawled in the margin. Not my dad's handwriting. I didn't recognize it at all. I put the flyer back exactly where I'd found it, underneath the grocery list, corner tucked the same way. Upstairs, I sat on my bed thinking about Grandpa's kitchen table, about Grandma setting my sandwich down without needing to ask what I wanted because she already knew. Somebody, somewhere in that house, was already pricing my grandparents' home in dollar signs, and it wasn't even for sale. Grandpa Harold died 2 years later. I was 14. It was a Tuesday, gray sky, damp grass, folding chairs sinking slightly into the lawn. I sat in the second row holding his handkerchief, blue plaid, frayed at the edges, faintly smelling of pine. At the reception, I noticed Greg and his brother Wade standing off by the dessert table, not eating, talking low, a folder tucked under Wade's arm, Greg nodding along to whatever he was saying. I caught one line as I passed. "We should move on this before probate gets complicated." They were discussing the cabin at my grandfather's funeral, over cookies and lemonade, while people were still offering condolences a few feet away. I said nothing. I was 14, with no power, no voice, and no idea that my grandfather had already accounted for this exact moment years in advance. 2 years after that, Grandma Vivian got sick in March and was gone by June. Holding my hand the last time I visited her, her grip still surprisingly firm for how thin she'd become, she whispered, "The cabin is yours, Iris. Don't let them take it. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma," I said. She squeezed my hand once and closed her eyes. After her funeral, another gray day, the same sinking folding chairs. Greg sat at our kitchen table and told Denise, with visible relief, like something heavy had finally lifted off him, "Now we can finally sort out the property." That same evening, I heard him on the phone with Wade out in the garage, pacing back and forth, his voice lighter than it had been in weeks. "Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get it moving." I was standing in the hallway holding a glass of water, and something settled into my chest like a stone. My grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was a clearance sale. I didn't cry that night. I made a different kind of decision instead. I just didn't know yet how I was going to act on it. Between 16 and almost 18, the cabin became my quiet act of defiance. Every Saturday morning I drove out to Cedar Lake in a used Honda I'd bought with 2 years of babysitting money. I patched the porch screen with a kit from the hardware store. I replaced the weather stripping around the back door. I swept pine needles off the roof every autumn because Grandpa had taught me that's exactly how leaks start. A little debris, a little standing water, and suddenly you've got rot in the rafters. Nobody asked me to do any of it. Nobody in my house even knew I was doing it. At home, the language around the cabin shifted, slowly at first, and then all at once. It stopped being Grandpa's place and became the family property. Greg said it now like it had always been true, like he hadn't spent years barely mentioning it. Wade started showing up every other Sunday for dinner, sometimes with manila folders under his arm, sometimes with a laptop already open to real estate listings before dessert was even served. Once I tried pushing back. "What about Grandma's wish? She wanted me to keep it." My mom, Denise, set down her fork gently, the exact way she does right before correcting Kelsey's homework. "Your grandma was very emotional at the end, sweetie. This is business. Business." That was the word they'd started using for everything that used to be love. It came up constantly, business decisions, business sense, being business-minded about the property. It was never about grief. It was never about a promise. It was numbers. By 17, Greg got more direct about it. "When you turn 18, we'll figure this out as a family," he'd say, like it was a kindness he was extending me. The way he said the word family, I knew exactly what he meant by it, and it had nothing to do with me having a say. One November afternoon, alone at the cabin clearing out the hall closet, I found a sealed envelope behind a stack of old quilts, my name written on the front in Grandma Vivian's handwriting. Inside was a single business card, Margaret Caldwell, attorney at law. Beneath her name, in small print, Tmain Family Trust. My hand shook, not from fear, from recognition. Grandma had left it there for me to find, knowing I'd be the one cleaning out the closets. Not Greg, not Wade, me. I slipped the card into my wallet and didn't call. Not yet. 3 months before my 18th birthday, Margaret Caldwell called me first, on a Thursday evening in February. "Iris, this is Margaret Caldwell. I was your grandparents' attorney. I need to speak with you before your birthday. There are things you need to know, and there isn't much time." She asked me to come alone to her downtown office that Saturday. Margaret was in her late 50s, silver-haired, reading glasses hanging on a chain around her neck, her office small and orderly, smelling faintly of old paper and coffee. She sat across from me and opened a folder without much preamble. "Your grandparents hired me 6 years ago," she said. "They established an irrevocable trust, the cabin, a savings account, and an investment portfolio. Total value, approximately $2.1 million. All of it is held in the trust. You are the sole beneficiary." I felt the room tilt slightly, the way it does when you stand up too fast. My grandparents had left me everything. They'd transferred it into the trust while they were still alive, which meant that legally, none of it had ever entered their estate. It couldn't go through probate. My father and my uncle had no legal claim to any of it, no matter what they assumed. She slid a document across the desk toward me, a summary of the trust, my name printed plainly on the second line. The title to the cabin, she explained, had been recorded under the trust of the county recorder's office 6 full years earlier. Your father doesn't know that, she said. Why didn't they tell him? I asked. She paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Your grandfather said, and these are his exact words. I wrote them down at the time. My sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt. The room was very quiet after that. Then Margaret told me one more thing. Someone had recently been making inquiries at the county recorder's office regarding the cabin's title, within just the last month. She wanted me to start paying attention. After that meeting, I started paying attention. Not suspiciously, just quietly. The next Sunday, Wade came for dinner, then disappeared into the garage with Greg, door open a crack, just enough for me to hear. Wade, I already signed the purchase agreement with Ridgeline, $450. But we need the title clean before closing. Greg, how do we get clean? Quitclaim deed. Dad's gone. Mom's gone. We're the legal heirs. We quitclaim the property to ourselves. Record it, sell. Is that legal? Standard transfer between heirs. Nobody's going to question it. Then quieter Greg. What about Iris? Wade's answer came fast, like he'd already rehearsed it. She's 17. She can't do anything. By the time she's 18, the sale's already through. Done deal. She'll be upset. She'll get over it. We'll give her a cut. 50 grand for college. She should be grateful. I stepped back from the door, hands cold. Wade had already signed a $450,000 purchase agreement for a cabin he didn't own, sitting on land held in a trust he had no idea existed. That night, I texted Margaret 2 words. They're accelerating. Her reply came in 3 minutes. I expected that. Come see me Saturday. We'll prepare everything you need. At Margaret's office, she laid out a timeline on a legal pad like a battle plan. The title was already under the trust. If Wade filed a quitclaim deed, the county should reject it because the chain of title wouldn't match. But if he submitted extra documentation, even a falsified affidavit, he could create what's called a cloud on title, enough to tie the property up in litigation for a year or more. So I have to act first, I said. You have to act on time, she corrected. The moment you turn 18, you're a legal adult. You can formally accept your role as successor beneficiary. Once you sign, I file a lease pendens, a public notice of legal interest, at the recorder's office first thing the next morning. That freezes the title. I asked what I needed to do. Show up. Sign 1 document. I'll handle the rest. I drove home to find Greg in the kitchen, cheerful. Good news, kiddo. I'm throwing you a birthday party. Whole family, Saturday night. It's going to be a big one. My dad was planning my birthday party. My uncle was planning to sell my grandmother's cabin. And I sat at the table smiling, because in 9 days I was going to let them believe everything was going exactly according to their plan. I'll be honest. Knowing what was coming while staying quiet was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Part of me wanted to say it, Dad, I know. But Margaret was right. Tipping them off would only send them looking for another way around it. So I waited. Have you ever had to stay silent to protect yourself, even when every part of you wanted to speak up? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because this story's about to turn. 5 days before my birthday, my mom sat beside me on the couch, using her let's talk like adults voice, soft, rehearsed. Now that you're almost 18, there are some family decisions we should make together. Together. The word landed like a costume. The cabin costs money, taxes, insurance, repairs. Your dad's business has been struggling. If we sell, we could pay off debt and set up a college fund, for you and Kelsey both. Grandma wanted me to keep it, I said. A flash of impatience crossed her face before she smoothed it over. Your grandma was very sentimental at the end, Iris. Sentiment doesn't pay property taxes. Greg walked in right on cue. I've already talked to a buyer. Good price, fair deal. Who? A development company. Wade knows them. What company? A longer pause. Ridgeline something. I'll think about it, I said. Greg patted my shoulder, satisfied, like he'd just closed a negotiation. That night, Kelsey knocked on my door, hair still damp from the shower. Mom and Dad keep talking about the cabin after I'm supposed to be asleep. They sound excited, but also nervous. Is something going on? I pulled the blanket over her feet. Don't worry about it, Kels. She didn't look convinced. I'd said I'd think about it. That wasn't a yes, and they knew it, which is exactly why they kept pushing. 3 days before my birthday, Uncle Wade caught me in the driveway, casual clothes, big smile, leaning against his car like he just happened to be nearby. Wade's a real estate agent. Nothing he does is accidental. We sat on the front steps. That lake lot alone is worth $450. I can get us a deal, fast close, clean paperwork. And what do I get? $50,000 cash for college. I'll let the number hang there. 50 out of 450. You're 18, Iris. Most kids would jump at that. Whose name is on the deed, Uncle Wade? His smile flickered, just for a second. Your grandparents, but they're gone now. Passes to your dad and me, as next of kin. That's not how it works, and he knew it. He sells houses for a living. He was counting on me not knowing. I'll think about it, I said again. He stood, brushing off his jeans. Don't overthink this one. Opportunities like this don't wait. He was on the phone before he even reached the end of the street. That night, I texted Margaret again. They're accelerating. Stay the course, she wrote back. 3 more days. The night before my birthday, I drove to the cabin alone. Cedar Lake sat flat and dark under a half moon. The pines cut out against the sky. I sat in Grandpa's chair on the porch and checked my email. Margaret had sent the full document package, tabbed and flagged, ready for my signature. I read each page twice, then closed my laptop and just listened to the lake. Grandpa used to sit right there and say, "Patience isn't weakness, Iris. It's timing." I'd always thought he meant fishing. The tears came without warning. Not a collapse, just a quiet overflow. I cried because I wish this were different. I wish my dad had taken me fishing here instead of pricing its resale value. I wish my mom had asked what I wanted instead of telling me what was practical. I wished I didn't have to sign a legal document at midnight to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. But wishes don't hold up in court. Trust documents do. At 11:50 p.m., the house asleep, I opened my laptop and video called Margaret in her home office. Ready. When the clock hits midnight, you're a legal adult in every sense that matters. She walked me through it one more time. I'd signed the acceptance of successor beneficiary form. 1 page confirming I was formally receiving the trust my grandparents had created. From that second on, every decision about its assets ran through me and Margaret together. First thing tomorrow, 8 a.m., I file a lease pendants. Once it's recorded, no one can sell, transfer, or encumber the title while it's active. What if they've already filed something? Then it gets flagged. The chain of title shows the trust recorded 6 years ago, not her father. Any conflicting document gets kicked back. I looked at the signed page in my hand, my name in ink beneath my grandparents' names in print. This isn't a trick, Iris, Margaret said, gently. This is your grandfather's last gift. You just had to be old enough to accept it. My laptop clock read 12:03 a.m. I was 18, the legal beneficiary of the Tmain family irrevocable trust. Downstairs, my uncle's quitclaim deed was already a dead document. He'd find out in about 9 hours. Across town that same night, Wade was printing paperwork. I pieced this part together later from the county clerk and from what Greg eventually admitted. While I signed upstairs, Wade drafted a quitclaim deed and called Greg at 11:30. Everything's ready. We file at 9. Recorder opens at 8, but I want Iris distracted with birthday stuff first. Greg asked if he was sure. They're dead, Greg. We're next of kin. It's simple. It wasn't simple. It was forgery dressed up as paperwork. Wade also had a signed purchase agreement open on his laptop. $450,000 from Ridgeline Development, closing 30 days after the deed recorded, with a $45,000 penalty if he couldn't deliver clean title. He'd signed it 2 months earlier, before the title had even been properly searched. He'd simply assumed the cabin was still in the estate. He'd bet nearly $500,000 on a piece of paper that was never his to sign. My party started at 4 the next afternoon. Maybe 20 people, neighbors, my parents' friends from church, 2 of Greg's old business contacts, balloons, a banner, a sheet cake from the bakery on Main. I smiled, thanked everyone, opened small gifts. Folded in my jacket pocket was the signed acceptance form. I didn't need to touch it. It was already done. Greg stood up near the cake table, tapping his glass. Iris is officially an adult today. Denise and I are so proud. And as a family, we have some exciting plans for the future. Right, Iris? Every face turned toward me. Thanks, Dad, I said. Nothing more. He laughed it off and raised his glass. The room moved on. Across the room, Wade checked his phone, typing fast with both thumbs. Nora Beckett, our neighbor at the lake, caught my arm by the window. Your grandmother would want you to know something, she said quietly. I saw your uncle at the cabin last week with 2 men in suits, walking the lot line with a measuring tape. Wade had brought buyers to the property before he even had a title to sell. After the cake, Greg stood again, louder this time, more deliberate. Our family's been through a tough stretch, financially. Some of you know about the store. But Harold and Vivian left us something. The cabin at Cedar Lake. As a family, we've decided to sell it to secure everyone's future. He looked right at me. Iris understands. She knows this is what's best for all of us, right, sweetheart? Every eye in the room found me. I set my fork down. The clink was the only sound. I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad. His smile stayed fixed, but his jaw tightened. She's kidding. Birthday nerves. I'm not kidding. Wade stepped in from the doorway. Come on, Iris, this isn't the time. I took a slow sip of water. You're right, Uncle Wade. This isn't the time. The time is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. The guests left quickly after that. The kind of exit people make when they can feel a storm brewing in someone else's house. Once the door closed on the last near stranger, Denise turned on me in the kitchen. Do you have any idea what your father's going through? He might lose this house, the one you sleep in every night. And you're holding onto a cabin you visit on weekends. I visit every weekend, Mom. That's not the point. We're a family. Families make decisions together. If you love this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer to tell you what to do. My stomach dropped. How do you know about a lawyer? Wade found the car in your bag last week. Margaret Caldwell. Who is she, Iris? Before I could answer, Nora's voice cut in from the doorway, even and firm. That girl has every right to talk to a lawyer, Denise. Vivian would have wanted that. Denise wheeled around. This is a family matter, Nora. Nora didn't move. Vivian was my friend for 40 years. I think I know what she wanted. She left. The neighbors slipped out behind her. Now it was just the 5 of us. Greg closed the kitchen door, sat down, folded his hands like a man about to deliver terms. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, Wade and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get a fair share, and we move on as a family. What's my share? $50,000. Out of how much? He didn't answer. Wade filled the gap. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. And if I say no? Greg's jaw set. Then you're on your own. No help with college. No more living under this roof. The faucet dripped once in the silence. You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday. I'm asking you to be part of this family. I stood. I am part of this family, Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises. I walked past Wade, past Kelsey on the stairs with her knees pulled to her chest, and went upstairs. Greg thought his deadline was 9 a.m. He didn't know Margaret's was 8. If someone you loved ever quietly prepared something to protect you, even after they were gone, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. Now let me tell you what happened. The county recorder's office opened at 8. Margaret Caldwell was first through the door, a certified copy of the trust, and a lease pendens notice in her leather folder. The clerk reviewed it, checked existing title records, and stamped it recorded. Done. From that moment, anyone pulling the title on Cedar Lake would see the notice. Tmain Family Irrevocable Trust, Margaret Caldwell. Trustee, Iris Tmain, beneficiary. At 8:14, Margaret called. It's done. Whatever they bring and will be rejected on chain of title grounds. I was eating cereal at the kitchen table while Greg got dressed upstairs. At 8:30, he and Wade came down together, Greg in his old business shirt, Wade with the folder tucked under his arm. We'll be back by lunch, Greg said, grabbing his keys. Good luck, I told him. He paused in the doorway, looked at me a beat too long, then walked out. Margaret stayed at the recorder's office on purpose and watched it happen. At 9:05, Wade slid the quitclaim deed across the counter with a confident nod. The clerk typed the parcel number, read the screen, typed again, and stopped. I can't record this, sir. The property's held under the Tmain Family Irrevocable Trust, recorded in 2020. There's also a lease pendens filed this morning. That's impossible, Wade said. Our parents own that property. The deed transferred to the trust 6 years ago. This quick claim doesn't match current ownership. Greg stepped up. There's no trust. Our parents never mention one. I'd recommend speaking with the trustee listed, a Margaret Caldwell. Wade's hand went flat on the counter, his face draining. The name from the business card they'd found in my bag was now sitting on a public record they couldn't erase. Greg turned on him. You said this was simple. I didn't know about any trust. You're a real estate agent. How did you not check the title first? The call came at 9:22. I was on the porch watching the neighbor's sprinkler. What did you do? Greg's voice was tight, shaking. I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never heard of. Margaret's been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked. A long silence. This is my parents' property, Iris. I'm their son. I kept my voice even. Not because they didn't love you. Because they didn't trust you with it. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. We'll fight this. My party started at 4 the next afternoon. Maybe 20 people, neighbors, my parents' friends from church, 2 of Greg's old business contacts, balloons, a banner, a sheet cake from the bakery on Main. I smiled, thanked everyone, opened small gifts. Folded in my jacket pocket was the signed acceptance form. I didn't need to touch it. It was already done. Greg stood up near the cake table, tapping his glass. Iris is officially an adult today. Denise and I are so proud. And as a family, we have some exciting plans for the future. Right, Iris? Every face turned toward me. Thanks, Dad, I said. Nothing more. He laughed it off and raised his glass. The room moved on. Across the room, Wade checked his phone, typing fast with both thumbs. Nora Beckett, our neighbor at the lake, caught my arm by the window. Your grandmother would want you to know something, she said quietly. I saw your uncle at the cabin last week with 2 men in suits, walking the lot line with a measuring tape. Wade had brought buyers to the property before he even had a title to sell. After the cake, Greg stood again, louder this time, more deliberate. Our family's been through a tough stretch, financially. Some of you know about the store. But Harold and Vivian left us something. The cabin at Cedar Lake. As a family, we've decided to sell it to secure everyone's future. He looked right at me. Iris understands. She knows this is what's best for all of us, right, sweetheart? Every eye in the room found me. I set my fork down. The clink was the only sound. I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad. His smile stayed fixed, but his jaw tightened. She's kidding. Birthday nerves. I'm not kidding. Wade stepped in from the doorway. Come on, Iris, this isn't the time. I took a slow sip of water. You're right, Uncle Wade. This isn't the time. The time is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. The guests left quickly after that. The kind of exit people make when they can feel a storm brewing in someone else's house. Once the door closed on the last near stranger, Denise turned on me in the kitchen. Do you have any idea what your father's going through? He might lose this house, the one you sleep in every night. And you're holding onto a cabin you visit on weekends. I visit every weekend, Mom. That's not the point. We're a family. Families make decisions together. If you love this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer to tell you what to do. My stomach dropped. How do you know about a lawyer? Wade found a car in your bag last week. Margaret Caldwell. Who is she, Iris? Before I could answer, Nora's voice cut in from the doorway, even and firm. That girl has every right to talk to a lawyer, Denise. Vivian would have wanted that. Denise wheeled around. This is a family matter, Nora. Nora didn't move. Vivian was my friend for 40 years. I think I know what she wanted. She left. The neighbors slipped out behind her. Now it was just the 5 of us. Greg closed the kitchen door, sat down, folded his hands like a man about to deliver terms. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, Wade and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get a fair share, and we move on as a family. What's my share? $50,000. Out of how much? He didn't answer. Wade filled the gap. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. And if I say no? Greg's jaw set. Then you're on your own. No help with college. No more living under this roof. The faucet dripped once in the silence. You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday. I'm asking you to be part of this family. I stood. I am part of this family, Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises. I walked past Wade, past Kelsey on the stairs with her knees pulled to her chest, and went upstairs. Greg thought his deadline was 9 a.m. He didn't know Margaret's was 8. If someone you loved ever quietly prepared something to protect you, even after they were gone, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. Now let me tell you what happened. The county recorder's office opened at 8. Margaret Caldwell was first through the door, a certified copy of the trust, and Elise Pendon's notice in her leather folder. The clerk reviewed it, checked existing title records, and stamped it recorded. Done. From that moment, anyone pulling the title on Cedar Lake would see the notice. Tmain Family Irrevocable Trust, Margaret Caldwell. Trustee, Iris Tmain, beneficiary. At 8:14, Margaret called. It's done. Whatever they bring and will be rejected on chain of title grounds. I was eating cereal at the kitchen table while Greg got dressed upstairs. At 8:30, he and Wade came down together, Greg in his old business shirt, Wade with the folder tucked under his arm. We'll be back by lunch, Greg said, grabbing his keys. Good luck, I told him. He paused in the doorway, looked at me a beat too long, then walked out. Margaret stayed at the recorder's office on purpose and watched it happen. At 9:05, Wade slid the quitclaim deed across the counter with a confident nod. The clerk typed the parcel number, read the screen, typed again, and stopped. I can't record this, sir. The property's held under the Tmain Family Irrevocable Trust, recorded in 2020. There's also a lease pendens filed this morning. That's impossible, Wade said. Our parents own that property. The deed transferred to the trust 6 years ago. This quitclaim doesn't match current ownership. Greg stepped up. There's no trust. Our parents never mentioned one. I'd recommend speaking with the trustee listed, a Margaret Caldwell. Wade's hand went flat on the counter, his face draining. The name from the business card they'd found in my bag was now sitting on a public record they couldn't erase. Greg turned on him. You said this was simple. I didn't know about any trust. You're a real estate agent. How did you not check the title first? The call came at 9:22. I was on the porch watching the neighbor's sprinkler. What did you do? Greg's voice was tight, shaking. I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never heard of. Margaret's been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked. A long silence. This is my parents' property, Iris. I'm their son. I kept my voice even. Not because they didn't love you. Because they didn't trust you with it. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. We'll fight this. You can try, but the trust is irrevocable. Even I can't undo it. You don't know what you're talking about. I do, Dad. I've had 3 months to learn. He hung up. No goodbye. I sat there shaking, not from anger, from the weight of saying that to my own father. My phone buzzed again, an unfamiliar number, brisk and corporate. Miss Tmain, this is Carter Briggs, Ridgeline Development. We have a purchase agreement with Wade Tmain for the Cedar Lake property. He guaranteed clean title, and we've just been informed there's a lease pendens on the parcel. My uncle doesn't own that property. It's been held in an irrevocable trust since 2020. I'm the sole beneficiary. He represented himself as the heir. Representation doesn't create ownership. I'd suggest you speak with your own attorney. He asked if there was any possibility of a sale directly to the trust. The property isn't for sale. His tone hardened. Then we'll be pursuing our remedies against Mr. Tmain. I gave him Margaret's number, and within the hour she confirmed everything. The trust was valid. Wade had no authority, and the agreement had been signed on a misrepresentation of ownership. Ridgeline moved immediately to pursue him for breach of contract, the $45,000 penalty, plus damages. That afternoon, Margaret called with one more detail. The quitclaim deed Wade tried to file had a notary stamp that doesn't match any registered notary in the county. It appears to be forged. I closed my eyes. That's a felony in this state, isn't it? Yes. My uncle hadn't just tried to take my cabin. He'd committed a crime to do it. Greg came home at 2, moving like a man, carrying something heavy and invisible. Denise's face was blotched from crying. He sat across from me at the dining table. I'm going to lose this house, Iris. The bank's on me for $180,000. The store's gone. That cabin was our way out. I'm sorry about the business, Dad. But the cabin was never your way out. It was Grandpa and Grandma's gift to me. For what? You're 18. What does an 18-year-old need with a lakefront cabin? It's not about what I need. It's about what they wanted. Denise stepped in. They were old. Iris, they weren't thinking clearly at the end. They were thinking clearly enough to hire a lawyer 6 years before they died. Greg slammed his palm on the table. I'll contest the trust. Margaret's voice came through my phone, which I'd left open on speaker, not to trap him, just to save time. Mr. Tmain, contesting an irrevocable trust established 6 years before the grantor's deaths, with full legal capacity documented and witnessed, will cost more in legal fees than the property is worth. I'd strongly advise against it. Greg looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I saw something new in his eyes. Not anger, recognition. 2 hours later, Wade called the house. I heard every word through the thin hallway wall. Ridgeline's suing me. $45,000 in penalties, plus damages. They're saying it's fraud. Greg's reply was colder than I'd ever heard him. Did you? I thought we owned it. You're a real estate agent. You do title searches for a living. How did you not check? I assumed. You assumed. And now I'm sitting here with nothing because you assumed. I need a lawyer. So do I. Don't call this house again until you've talked to one. He hung up. I found Kelsey in her room, headphones around her neck, eyes wide. Is Uncle Wade in trouble? Yeah, Kels. He is. Is Dad? I sat on the edge of her bed. Dad made bad choices. Uncle Wade made worse ones. She nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but scared enough to know something. Over the next 3 weeks, it all fell like dominoes, each one making a sound as it went. Ridgeline Development filed a civil suit against Wade. Breach of contract, misrepresentation of title, and a demand for the $45,000 penalty clause, plus another $60,000 in damages and legal costs on top of it. The county district attorney's office opened a formal investigation into the forged notary stamp, and an investigator was assigned to the case within days. Wade's real estate license was suspended pending the outcome, and with it, his entire income stopped almost overnight. Court filings are public record, and the lawsuit named the Cedar Lake property by its exact parcel number, which meant anyone paying attention at the courthouse could connect the dots. The neighbors read the local paper. Word travels fast in a small town, even when nobody involved is the one spreading it. By the second week, the story had made its way through the Rotary Club, through the church parking lot after Sunday service, and through the checkout line at the grocery store on Main Street. Wade called me once. Iris, please, ask your lawyer to drop the lease pendants. If the title's clear, maybe I can negotiate something with Ridgeline. It protects my property, Uncle Wade. It stays. Your grandparents would be ashamed of you. I'll let that sit a moment. My grandparents are the ones who set this up. They chose this. They chose me. I don't think shame is what they'd feel. He hung up. Greg never did contest the trust. Margaret was right. The legal fees alone would have buried him. Instead, he did what he probably should have done 2 years earlier. Sold the struggling store a loss, enough to negotiate a repayment plan with the bank. The house stayed barely. The savings didn't. Denise went back to work at a pharmacy for the first time in a decade, telling neighbors she just wanted to stay busy. Nobody quite believed her, but nobody pushed either. The town knew the shape of it, even if not every detail. Harold Tmain's sons had tried to sell his cabin, and his granddaughter had stopped them. Greg and I didn't speak for 2 weeks. Nora brought me a warm apple pie one afternoon. Your parents made their choices, she said, but they're still your parents. Don't carry their shame. That's theirs. Kelsey called me one evening, voice small. I don't understand everything that happened, but I'm sorry they put you through this. My throat tightened. Thanks, Kels. Are you okay? I'm getting there. I drove to the cabin one Saturday, in late April, the dogwoods blooming pale along the lake road. I let myself in with the key Grandpa had given me at 14. In case you ever need to get in when we're not here, he'd said. I didn't know, then he meant permanently. The cabin smelled the same. Pine, old books, the faint sweetness I still can't quite name. I walked through every room. The kitchen table Grandpa built, still level. Grandma's bookshelves, still sorted by color. In the desk drawer by the window, I found an envelope with my name in Grandpa's handwriting. Margaret had told me it would be there, save until after the trust was settled. His letter said he knew his sons would try to sell the cabin, and that he didn't blame them. Greg was still his boy, and he loved him. But Greg had never understood the difference between something that has value and something that's valuable. He'd chosen me, he wrote, not because I was perfect, but because I was the one who asked whether the roof needed patching before I ever asked what the place was worth. The last line read, "Take care of it. It took care of you first." I sat on the porch a long time after that, just breathing. Margaret called the following week with good news. The lease pendants could be lifted now that the threat was gone, and the record would show the trust as sole, clean owner. Wade had settled with Ridgeline, paying the $45,000 penalty out of a personal loan, and the deal was dead. The forged stamp case was still under review by the DA, a possible misdemeanor or felony, depending on how it unfolded, and his license stayed suspended in the meantime. Then Margaret added one more thing. The trust documents also set aside a separate $50,000 education fund for me, quietly accruing interest for 6 years. Now, just over $58,000. The same number Greg had offered as my share. The same number Wade had dangled like a bribe. My grandparents had already taken care of it, without telling anyone. Your grandparents would be proud, Margaret said. I just kept a promise. I told her. I enrolled that week at Ridgemont Community College, environmental science with a minor in forestry, 20 minutes from the cabin, closer than my parents' house ever was. On the housing form, under current address, I wrote the cabins for the first time. It felt like coming home, because it was... I asked Greg and Denise to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, Neutral Ground. Greg wore one of Grandpa's old flannel shirts. Denise held her purse tight the way she does when she's nervous. Once the cups were on the table, I said, I love you both. I need you to know that, because what I'm about to say might not sound like it. The cabin isn't for sale. Not now, not ever. I won't feel guilty for keeping a promise Grandma trusted me to keep because she didn't think anyone else would. Greg stared into his coffee. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I went on, but if we're going to have a relationship, it has to be built on respect, not on what I can give you, not on guilt, not on the idea that I owe you something just because you're my parents. Denise started to protest that they only wanted what was best. Then start by being honest about what happened. You tried to sell something that wasn't yours. You threatened to kick me out. You went through my things. She closed her mouth. Greg finally spoke, voice rough. I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it today, I said, and left enough cash for all 3 coffees. I'll call you Sunday. He gave one small nod. Walking out into the sunlight, it was the most I could hope for, and it was enough. Kelsey showed up at the cabin one Sunday in May with a pizza box and her old oversized hoodie. We ate on the porch, watching a heron stand motionless near the dock. I didn't know about any of it, she said finally. Mom and Dad never told me. I know. Was I part of the problem? I looked at her, 15, thin-shouldered, still growing into whoever she'd become. She hadn't asked to be anyone's favorite. You were a kid, Kels. We both were. She leaned her head on my shoulder for a moment, then sat back up. Can I come back sometimes? Anytime. Early one June morning, coffee in hand, I sat on the porch and watched the mist lift slowly off Cedar Lake, the pines sharp against a pale sky, a loon calling twice out on the water before going quiet again. I didn't win against my family. I want to be clear about that, because it would be easy to tell this story like a victory lap, and it isn't one. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the very people who were supposed to protect you in the first place. There's no trophy waiting at the end for surviving something that never should have happened to begin with. But I kept a promise, and for the first time in my life, I was standing somewhere that actually belonged to me. Not because I'd fought tooth and nail for it, but because 2 people 6 years earlier had loved me enough to plan for exactly this moment, long before I understood I'd ever need it. They saw the storm coming before I did. They built the shelter before I even knew I'd need one. My grandparents couldn't stop my parents from being who they are. They couldn't make Greg any less desperate, or Denise any less afraid of losing what little stability they had left, or keep Wade from chasing money that was never his to chase. But they could make absolutely sure I had solid ground to stand on when everything else gave way. I still think about the line in Grandpa's letter, the difference between something that has value and something that's actually valuable. This cabin has both. My family spent 2 years focused entirely on the wrong one, and it cost them almost everything they were trying to protect. If you're listening to this and you feel like nobody's in your corner, sometimes the people protecting you aren't standing in front of you. Sometimes they planned for you years ago, quietly, without telling anyone. And sometimes all you have to do is show up, sign the paper, and keep the promise. Peace doesn't come from revenge. It comes from standing on something solid and knowing you built your life on it. If this story made you feel something, anger, relief, hope, even just a little less alone, then it did what I hoped it would. So tell me, If you could protect one thing in your life, a place, a person, a promise, what would it be? I read every comment. And if this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs it. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you here for the next one.